Morning, dog, cat, postman, delivery, who knows what's going on. So I am going to show you this morning how to make Crustless savoury quiches. These are absolutely fabulous little nibbles that you can pop in a lunchbox, just have with a couple of drinks, or basically stuff your face with a nice salad, go alongside it at lunchtime. They're really quick and easy to make, and I'm going to make two different flavours this morning with you lot. I'm going to make a cheese and onion, and I'm going to make a bacon and mushroom. So what I'm going to do first is to get my bacon and mushrooms on to cook, because they will take the longest. So I'm just going to do those of you who watched last time, it's the Arga Lid Fandango coming back at you again. What I've done is cheated ever so slightly, and I bought pre-cut lardons because it's just much easier. With these little mini crustless quiches, one of the key things is keeping everything very small, and you'll see why in a second. So I've just lobbed those on. Grab a spoon, spread those out a bit, and you should hear those sizzling in a minute. And whilst I do that, I'm going to chop this mushroom as well. Now, these little quiches, crustless quiches, are made with an egg batter, which I'm going to make in a minute. And what's great about them is that you can put pretty much any fillings you like in them, and you can make them as big or as small as you like. And what I'm doing here, as you can see, is just roughly chopping this mushroom into fairly small bits. Of course, all of you Thermomix owners, fans, etc., will be sitting there with a little smug inside face going, I would just put that in my Thermomix and it would be done in 90 seconds. Well, don't care. So you can hear the bacon's going. And what I want to happen here is I want the bacon to start to render the fat down, because I want to cook the mushrooms in the bacon fat. I don't want to add any more fat to it. So I'm just going to let those start to sizzle a little bit more. And you can hear that's getting a good fry on now, and the chopped mushrooms are going in. So they are going to start to work their magic. Give them a little stir. And then I'm just going to let those sit whilst I go ahead and prepare the cheese and onion bit. So obviously with this bacon and mushroom, it's a cooked filling, if you like, but the cheese and onion one won't be. So I'm just going to dice an onion. And for those of you who may be worried, yes, I did wash my hands on the way through after having to rugby tackle Boris off my desk. So I'm just going to cut this into fairly small dice as quickly as I can. Go. And I'm not going to need much, because with the cheese and onion filling, I'm not going to cook the onion. So all I've used there is half an onion. I'll use the other half for something later on today. So the reason I've cut that really small is so that when I go ahead and put them in the muffin pan, if you like, you're not going to get huge quantities of raw onion in that muffin, because that's going to be quite strong. So it's quite a light flavouring of the onion. If the thought of raw onion makes you want to cringe, then by all means cook it. Just with the onion filling particularly, don't use too much fat, otherwise it will separate in the muffin, and let it cool a little bit before you put them in. So I'm just going to keep stirring my bacon and mushroom as that's going along. It's starting to crisp up nicely, which is good. And here's the other thing with the cheese and onion. What I'm not going to do is grate the cheese. What I'm going to do is actually cut it into small chunks. Because when you eat the muffin, what you want is to get that little bit of cheese and onion gooiness going on inside, rather than it just be an overall cheese flavour. So the first thing that I'm going to do is tell you what cheese I've chosen, which is a cheese called Belton Fox. So this is a vintage red Leicester. So this is 18 months. Leicester, Debbie, you thought you'd enjoy that. Is a red Leicester. It's an 18-month-old red Leicester, readily available from the supermarket. What you're looking for is this really nice crumbly texture, which tells you that it's got a great flavour to it. And despite what I say in my cheesy foresight, when you're using this on a cheese board, and I say don't cut the nose off the cheese, I'm cooking with this. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the front part of the cheese off. And again, I'm going to just cut this into small-ish cubes, because it's quite crumbly. It's going to break down into little chunks all by itself most of the time, which is really good. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So that's my cheese ready to go. My bacon and mushrooms are frying brilliantly. I'm just going to, again, give those a stir. This is when you wish you had smelly vision, because there's nothing quite like the smell of frying bacon, is there, in that way. So while that's frying and I've chopped my cheese and onion, what I'm going to do is to make the batter. So what I have here, and you'll see why in a second, is a jug, because these little babies are going to be made in this muffin tin. Now, I'm a lucky girl because this is a silicone muffin tin, which makes life so much easier when you want to try and get them out. If you don't have a silicone mini muffin tin, I'll get the words out in a minute, grease it like billio, which is why I'm saying try not to add extra fat to any of the items that you're cooking, because if you need to grease this, you need a muffin tin, a small muffin tin, then you need to grease it really, really well, or these little angels stick like fury. What I'm going to make today is going to make however many of those are, 20 odd little mini muffins, or it will make 6 large proper size muffins with a little bit spare. Okay, so you get quite a lot out of it. Starting off with 6 free-range large eggs. The large egg bit is important, and if you're lucky enough to know somebody who has their own chickens like I do, the next 3 that I'm about to crack are from my neighbour Julie, and were laid this morning, which is absolutely fabulous. So thank you, ladies, next door in Chicken Central. And I'm just breaking all of those into my jug straight away. And then I've realised I've forgotten the spoon. Hang on a minute. There we go. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is to add some creme fraiche to the batter. Now, the reason I'm doing this is it lightens the egg a little bit, and it also helps these little muffins to rise somewhat. And I'm using 50% fat creme fraiche. And I've just got a dessert spoon, and I just need 3 dessert spoons of, ooh, hello, come back, there we go, of creme fraiche into the batter. Take my spoon out of the way, put it on the lid, that would be working. And I'm also just going to take the pan off just to let those cool ever so slightly before I start putting them in the muffin tin. So that's 6 eggs, 3 dessert spoons of creme fraiche. What's next on the agenda in here is some freshly ground black pepper, 2 or 3 good twists, and a healthy pinch of salt, which goes in there like that. Then it's time to get your whisk on. So all I'm going to do is just break this down and start to mix the ingredients together. Because you've put creme fraiche in this, it is never going to be smooth. You are always going to see lumps of creme fraiche in there, and that's fine. What you're wanting to do with the whisking is more getting air into that batter than it is trying to smooth it all together. So I am giving that a little whisk, and you can kind of see what I mean. It's not a completely smoothly incorporated batter, and that's okay. Get my little whisk out there, just cover myself in half of it, which is kind of how it normally works. And then I'm just going to take a small bunch of fresh chives, and I'm just going to snip those in to the batter. Scissors are your friend, because if your knife skills are anything like mine, trying to knife chop chives is just playing Russian roulette with your fingers. So there we go, nearly there. So that's some fresh chives in the mix, and then I'm just going to use the spoon that I used for the creme fraiche to stir that round rather than beat it anymore. Okay, so my batter is ready. My mushrooms and bacon have cooked as much as I want them to, because of course these are going to go in the oven. That's going to be hot, Sheena. So now it's time to start building these little mini muffins. So all I'm going to do to begin with is to start to put my different fillings in the bottom of these little cases. So I'm just going to take my onions to begin with and put a little bit of onion in the bottom of half of the tray. Just a little bit. I'll just throw it at it. That seems to be the way forward. There we go. And then the same with some of the cheese. So that each one of those little muffins has got a good chunk or two of cheese and onion in each one. And then I'm going to do the same with the bacon. And again, I'm just going to use the spoon that I had to mix up the batter. And again, I'm just putting a little spoonful in the bottom of each one, which I wish I could do more quickly, but there we go. And those are filling up nicely. Talk amongst yourselves. There we go. Okay. Nearly there. So that is a little bit of mushroom and bacon in the bottom of those as well. So if I just tip that up, you can see there's that little bit in each of those muffin pans. You'll notice that I haven't exactly done half of the cheese and onion. That's mostly because my husband likes the bacon ones, and we're going to be having these tonight when we're doing our happy hour with our friends, which was an hour and has now become 5. So I'm now going to start to add the batter to the pan, and that's why I make it in a jug, because actually each one of these little cases really only takes about a tablespoon of batter, and trying to do that with a ladle or what have you, I just found it really, really messy. So it's just using the jug and pouring in enough batter to just come about, don't know if you can see that quite as well as I can here, it's around about 1/2 centimetre or so underneath the rim of the case, because these are going to rise. If I've done this right, they're going to rise. So I'm just going to go ahead and carry on pouring that little bit of batter in. Here we go. No prizes for guessing what I'm having for my lunch today, directly after the meeting, before I do a coaching session. These cheese and onion lovelies, they are all mine. And I'm going to go ahead and carry on pouring that batter in as we go through. There we go. Think happy batter pouring thoughts as they're all going in. Oops, missed a bit of bacon there. Now, the great thing with this batter is you can add all sorts of different flavourings to it. I've just added some fresh chives this morning, but I'm going to talk to you in a minute whilst these are cooking about the other kind of flavours you can put in there. So there is my tray of mini muffins ready to go. So these are going in my Arga. So let me just go ahead and get those in, because that involves the burst of heat. Sorry, all right, slightly melting face. There we go. And they're going to pop in. Right. This now is the moment of truth. Right, so my Arga, bless it, I love it, and I'm absolutely, so lucky to have one. But Argas are hot or not hot. So at this point, it's like, I actually have no idea how long these are going to take to cook. So this is going to be a little bit of kind of seeing how things go on. But what you do in a normal oven is you preheat your oven to around about 180 fan, and you let that come up to heat, and then you put those little mini muffins in the center of the oven. If, like me, you have a, bless it, oil-powered dinosaur of an Arga, then it is basically don't put it near the top of the roasting oven, otherwise you'll have charcoal briquette muffins, which is no good for anybody. And if you are using the standard cooker, these will take around about 10 to 12 minutes. Check them at 10. What you're looking for is for them to have puffed up, so I'm going to check them in a minute. Now, the eagle-eyed of you will notice I've got some filling left, and that's why when I do these, I always have the bigger muffin tin available as well, because what I'll do is make some larger muffins in there that I can have for lunch tomorrow. And that's the great thing about these, is they're fabulous warm, and they're also equally fabulous cold. So they're going to take round about 10 to 12 minutes in the oven. There are all kinds of different flavors that you can add to the batter. The first time I made these, I was making them with chorizo. So I added a little bit of sweet paprika to the batter. I've made them almost like little mini toad in the holes with cocktail sausages, and I've added a little bit of mustard to the batter, which works really well. You can also use just normal spices, if you like, from the garden. Thyme works really well with any of the meaty ones. You know, the world's your oyster, really. If you've got a flavour combination that you really like in a normal quiche, give it a go in a crustless quiche. It's, you know, you're just doing the filling, and the filling is going to be the same. Some of the things that don't work are things that give off a lot of liquid, unless you go ahead and make sure that you've got all the liquid out before you put them in your muffin. So if you're thinking about maybe doing a spinach and prawn, for example, which is a really nice flavour combination, you have absolutely got to make sure that that spinach is bone dry before you put it in the muffin cases. Otherwise, all you'll find is it will separate the batter when you've cooked it, and you'll end up with your steamed spinach on the bottom and then a thin, flat layer of muffin on the top, which is just about as unpleasant as it sounds. So make sure that those are, you know, work really well. Broad beans work well. I know they're Amanda's favourite. Peas also work really well, and it's just a great thing to do. Play around with the flavours. You know, if you like Thai food, think about putting some Thai-inspired flavours in that batter: coriander, prawns, chili, that kind of thing. If you like Italian, sun-dried tomatoes, capers, black olives, all of that's really delicious. The basic batter, you can pretty much adapt to whatever you want, which just makes this an absolutely fantastic recipe that's really quick to knock up, and these keep really, really well. So when you've made a batch, you can pop them in a Tupperware and pop them in the fridge, and they'll last for 2 or 3 days. Just not in my house, because as soon as Ollie knows I've made these, they're gone in a heartbeat. So I'm just going to have a quick check. Good. Right. So they are setting beautifully. So whilst we're waiting for those to carry on, I'm going to go ahead and make up with the leftover bits of ingredient the larger muffins that I've got about enough batter for 2 or 3 of those. So again, putting the filling in. With the larger ones, they take roughly 20 minutes or so to cook, because obviously they are deeper muffin tins and require a little bit more cooking. And I'm also, in this case, just for speed, going to mix the fillings up. So just going to put the bacon in there as well. Okay, so just get rid of that. Now, what I want you to see before I do this is how well the batter stands. So, you know, I've been talking to you and waiting for the little mini ones to cook for 5 minutes or so. And the batter stands brilliantly. And quite often I'll make the batter at lunchtime, you know, whilst I'm waiting for my own lunch to cook, just let it stand until I'm ready to put them in the oven in the evening, or, you know, vice versa. Also works really well if you make it the day before and pop it in the fridge just with a little bit of cling film over the top. So if you're in a hurry or thinking about cooking for when we're allowed to, parties, remember those? Remember when we were actually allowed to have people in our houses that weren't related to us or shared a bed with us or shared a bathroom? Those days will return, people, they will return. And these are actually great little finger food snacks for drinks, etc. So again, similar idea, you just want to fill those larger muffin cases to within around about 1 centimetre on the top. And I'm going to pop those in. And they're going on the bottom. Okay, now, as is always the case with the Arga, normally by now the little ones would have cooked. Today, no, they haven't. So I think at this point, it's probably wise, if anybody has any questions, ask me now whilst I am waiting for those little mini muffins to come through, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 minutes, they will be ready. So seriously, if you've got any questions whilst I nibble a bit of cheese, now's the time.
I have a question. I noticed you didn't spray or put any oil or something or to stop it from sticking to the cases. Do they pop out easily then?
They do. The ones I'm using today are silicone. If you don't have silicone muffin cases, genuinely, I would really, really recommend getting some, because they pop out absolutely beautifully with no extra greasing or fat at all. if you don't have silicone cases and you don't want to buy any, and they're really easy to get, Lakeland's always good for that kind of thing, use paper cases like you would for cupcakes, because you'll stand less chance of the eggy batter sticking to the outside of the muffin tin, because you'll know when you cook with egg, if it burns onto something or sticks onto something, it's the devil's own job to get the stuff off. So I would use cupcake cases or silicone molds if you've got them.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
I have a question. Sheena, you used 50% fat creme fraiche. Is there a reason that it's 50% fat, or was it just what you had?
There is a reason. It's because basically I've just used 6 eggs and about 200 grams of cheese. And, in the nicest sense, much as I love my fat and my dairy, it's probably better for my heart if I'm not then dolloping on 100% creme fraiche. So that's why I've used the 50%. It doesn't actually make any difference to the batter. You'll get what you're looking for from the creme fraiche is that bit of acidic yogurtiness, if you like. And in fact, yogurt also works well. Greek yogurt particularly works very well in this batter, with feta and black olives in the mix. That's a really nice batter and ingredient mix. So 50% less fat because of all the other fatty things I've got in there, the bacon, etc., etc. But it works perfectly well without it.
Awesome, thank you.
Welcome.
I have one. If you wanted to make them with a crust, would that work in the mold, do you think? Or if you didn't want to use pastry, could you use something like potato or to line it?
Yeah, you absolutely could. So I've done these with crusts and actually done almost like a savoury, come on Sheena, think of the name, like a savoury cheesecake base. So what I actually used were cheese crackers that had gone a little bit beyond their best, blitzed them up in the food processor with a little bit of melted butter, and then press them into the mould. The important bit then is put the moulds in the fridge for at least half an hour before you cook them, because that butter's got to solidify so that they're going to hold their shape. And again, I use the silicone molds, so actually that made life really easy. Not sure how that would work with cupcake cases, but it's worth a try. So yeah, done it that way. Mashed potato, it's actually really good shout, Kitty. It's a great way to use leftover mashed potato. Similar thing. What I would do in that case is line the molds and then cook the potato for 10 minutes or so, just so it's slightly golden, because what you're looking for actually is the mold to hold its shape. So you need that potato to be cooked a little bit. Then you just pop your filling in, back in the oven, and yummy cheese, onion, potatoey gooiness is yours. Good question. I'm now wishing I did that with mashed potato. That would be great. Just checking again. This is, this doesn't happen on Ready Steady Cook, but there you go. Oh, they're rising.
If you do like a leek and cheese one, would you pre-cook?
Sorry, my arthritic algador went over that. Sorry, Karen, say again.
If you use leeks, would you have to pre-cook the leeks?
Yes. Yeah, I would do. Because the texture of the leek is going to be quite squeaky in your mouth if you've not pre-cooked it. So I would cook them and let them cool so that they've got that lovely soft caramelized leek flavor is what I do with that. I would also say that if you're going to use, I've used this it's one of the recipes that I have used in the past. Those of you who've seen my cheese foresight, for leftover bits of cheese that have been, on the end of a cheese board. It's good for that. Cut them up, mix them up, pop them in, and and use it for that one. But yeah, leeks would be absolutely awesome in there. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Just going back to Kitty's question, you can also make a base out of breadcrumbs. If you've got some bread that's gone stale, it's a great way again to use that up. Just blitz them in the food processor, mix it with a little bit of melted butter, line the mold, make sure that it firms up by putting it in the fridge, and then pop your quiche filling in the bready yumminess that involves. Now, drum roll. Here we go. Ta-da! Here we go. So you can see that they've puffed up really, really well. And even better, they pop out in a heartbeat. They are red hot, of course. There we go. So they pop out in a heartbeat. I'm going to attempt to pick this up on the spoon because it really is red hot. There we go. So there is one little mini crustless quiche steaming away. You can see how it's puffed up. Now, like a souffle, when I leave those, on the top of the Aga here, whilst we carry on the rest of the meeting, they are going to collapse onto themselves a little bit. But the best thing is, if I want to reheat them, I just pop them back in for 2 or 3 minutes and they will puff up again. So it's a little bit like doing a twice baked souffle. The inside, this is one of the bacon ones, you'll see, if I lift this up again, is like omelette. You know, you've got that lovely light batter, and the filling in this case, because it's the bacon one, is all at the bottom. And you've got that lovely light texture. And honestly, these are so incredibly Moorish, is why I make a great big tray of it, and why the postman's just come. Hang on.
Oh my goodness. Don't they look absolutely I just want to eat them. I need them in my life right now. Does anyone else have a sort of favorite lunchtime kind of quick but really tasty, really Moorish kind of something that they like to go to at lunchtime?
There you go. So they will keep for ages. They break up really beautifully, and even though it's straight out of the oven, and I shout at my husband for doing that, they're absolutely delicious. So the mushroom and the bacon have carried on cooking in that batter. So I've now got all that lovely flavour coming through, the lovely light batter from the egg, the added creme fraiche gives it that little tang. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you do crustless savoury quiches in 24 minutes.